What's going on, everybody? Good late morning or early afternoon for some of you. And I mentioned this briefly in a video yesterday, but I think it deserves a little bit more than the one or two sentences I had to say about it yesterday, because this is actually kind of cool. Because as a sports fan, sometimes when you're wondering something, I would even say maybe most of the time, when you're wondering something, you're just kind of left to wonder. Like when your team isn't doing something that seems like it would make sense to you, and you're wondering why aren't they doing this thing? A lot of the time you just kind of have to wonder away, right? It never gets answered. You don't ever really figure it out. But here's an instance where we actually get told pretty directly what is going on. So Brady Henderson sent this tweet out yesterday, and like I said, I did mention it, but this is definitely something that Seahawks fans should be interested in, because through the first three games of the year, the Seahawks are 3-0, but Anthony Bradford has been probably their worst player, or at the very least, their most negative, impactful player, right? Who's hurt us more than Anthony Bradford? Nobody. Anthony Bradford has been killing this team. He is the representative of the worst unit on the team. He does it every which way it can be done. And for very obvious reasons, fans are wondering why this guy is still playing, because we have a recent third round pick in Christian Haynes sitting on the bench behind him. So, correctly and fairly, I think, people are wondering what the heck is going on. Anthony Bradford, he's a penalty machine. This tweet says that Bradford has 6 penalties in 3 games. I thought it was 7, but either way, he is among the most penalized players in the league right now. He was doing a pretty decent job not allowing pressure until this most recent game when he got completely lit up by Miami. So now he's allowing pressures. He's allowing sacks. One of his holding penalties directly led to a safety, just off the top of my head. And the guy has been a complete disaster. Maybe you could say that first game he was good at run blocking, right? Maybe you could point to that first game and say, hey, he held his own run blocking, he did the thing. But other than that, he has been a complete disaster, so some fans are trying to figure this out. What does Christian Haynes have to do to get in the game? We just spent a third round pick on him. He's actually older than Anthony Bradford. Why doesn't he go in and try to replace him? So, before I say anything else in this video, I want to be very clear about something. I would not object to a short-term move to Christian Haynes just to see what happens. If the team came out this week and said, we're going to give Christian Haynes a full game against the Detroit Lions to see what happens and see if it's better than Bradford, I would not object to that, because Bradford's been so bad. Bradford has been bad in pretty much every way you can be bad as an offensive lineman. His moments of competency are becoming few and far between. It doesn't even really feel like he's getting better. So I would not object to a switch. And part of me, I'm going to admit this, is very concerned if Christian Haynes cannot separate himself from Bradford in practice. But Ryan Grubb actually directly addressed this situation with the media yesterday. They asked him about Christian Haynes, and what he basically said that Christian Haynes needs to improve his technique and power and strength if he wants to play. He basically said straight up, Christian Haynes is not ready. And that whatever you think of Bradford, Bradford looks better in practice. He looks better when we're training. And if you want to be very narrow here, I don't know if I agree with this philosophy because it's such a small sample size. Christian Haynes did get to play a little bit against the Patriots, and the results were problematic. I mean, he did make a big mistake that cost the team a touchdown, and there were clear issues with what he was doing out there. And Bradford does have an advantage in the area of strength, and he also has a little bit of an advantage in terms of experience because he played a decent chunk of the year last year. So basically, Ryan Grubb is talking about something that we as fans do occasionally struggle with. And I want to be clear, coaches don't always get this right. But the coaches are the ones who watch these guys every day in practice. They are the people who watch these guys every day in pregame warmups. And what will happen is the coaches will see one player, or let's call him player A, looks better than player B. And it is going to take a lot for that coach to change their mind that player B is actually better than player A. If they see player A doing better than player B in practice every day, they're not just going to look at a few bad plays in a game and go, okay, in goes player B. No, they're going to trust what they see in those practices that player A is still better. Not necessarily that player A is good, but he's better. And there is something to be said for that, right? Because we don't get to see all that. We don't get to see how these decisions are made. We don't get to see what makes Bradford look better than Haynes in practice. But the team seems to firmly believe that if Haynes had to go out there right now, his lack of strength and lack of power would actually make him look worse than Bradford, as hard as that is to believe. And I have a hard time believing it too, because Bradford has looked so bad. But this is going to have to be a situation where we trust what we see, what we're getting from the coaches, right? Because it'd be one thing if it was a veteran situation, right? Like, let's say if Anthony Bradford was a 10-year veteran who had spent his whole career on the Seahawks, and McDonald and Grubb and Huff had been his coach the whole time, and they just loved this guy, and they were blind to his weaknesses, maybe, and they just looked at him as this guy who can do no wrong. That'd be one thing, right? Then they would probably be unable to admit to themselves that Bradford's playing poorly. That's not really what's happening here. Bradford's actually younger than Christian Haynes. He does have a little more NFL experience, but only a little. And it's not like this coaching staff is more familiar with Bradford than Haynes. Not really. All these coaches just got here. So it's a little bit tough to swallow this. But for the moment, it seems like the team is already kind of committed to giving Bradford every opportunity to find his stride and start having some success in this league. And if they have to deal with some really bad play right now, they're willing to deal with that because they feel like Haynes would be worse and they feel like Bradford's upside probably fits the position a little bit more. I streamed with the Hawks Nest last night. One thing that he said that I think is very interesting and true is that Christian Haynes' style of play actually fits left guard a little bit better. So even though it's going to be a difficult transition for him, he does kind of expect Haynes to ultimately land at left guard when he's ready to go. And that could be why they don't want to put him in at right guard. So maybe that's the play here. I'm not against it. Excuse me. Left guard is way more important than right guard in the NFL right now. So I'm not against it for sure. I have no problem with that. But I think the bottom line here is that they've come out and said, without saying it, because they don't want to say it in these exact words, but the indication here is we've seen both guys and we feel pretty confident that Bradford is better. They did indicate that Haynes might get a little bit more opportunities going forward, but no indication they're actually going to make a change. So that's the short-term stuff, right? That's the short-term stuff when it comes to Bradford versus Haynes, which, again, I'm not married to one way or the other. If the team came out this week and was like, hey, Haynes is going to start, Bradford's going to the bench because Bradford plays so bad, I'd have no problem. But long term, I want to say this because I said in my post-game video for the Dolphins game that I like Bradford. I'm a Bradford fan, and some people asked, well, why are you a Bradford fan? He's terrible. We need to understand what Anthony Bradford is as a player. He is a player who got shockingly little experience in college football when he was at LSU. Like, this is his PFF page for 2019. He didn't start a single game. He played a total of 22 snaps in 3 games. He didn't start at all. He basically didn't play. He basically redshirted in 2019. You go to 2020, This was the COVID year. Played in one game, 7 snaps, didn't start. Basically redshirted. You could basically say he didn't play. It wasn't until 2021 when he got to start, I believe he started in all 6 of these games, that he finally became a part-time starter. And then I think he got hurt at the end of the year. He would have started the whole season if he had stayed healthy, I assume. But regardless, that's 6 starts. And then you go to 2022. That's the one full year he got in college football. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So not even 20 collegiate starts when he got drafted, right? This is a guy who is still very inexperienced. This is a player who has immense talent. Go look at his measurables. Compare them to other players at his position. He is a phenomenal athlete for the right guard spot. His athleticism at his size is rare. That's why he was a 4th-round pick. But everybody needs to understand that this is going to be a work in progress. Anthony Bradford was never going to come out of the box ready. And as of right now, he's still not even 23 and a half years old. Anthony Bradford came into the league. Well, I think he was drafted the day after he turned 21 or something. Still not even 24 years old. This is a guy who could be a really good player in this league. I think it'll really help him to have some degree of settled rosters, settled spots next to him on the offensive line. If we could get a long-term good right tackle, get a long-term good center who's more comfortable, that'll help him too. But this is an immensely talented guy. Go look up his athletic comparisons, like the 40 time, the 20-yard shuttle. This is a phenomenal athlete. So it was never going to be a smooth transition here for Bradford. So long term, yeah, that's why I'm a Bradford fan. This guy has the opportunity to be very good. He's playing a position where he will stand out very positively compared to almost everybody else. He will be able to do things at the right guard spot, my bad, that very few other players in this league are going to be able to do. That's worth waiting for, long term. If you want to get him out of there right now because you think he's unplayable, because he's going to get your quarterback killed, that I still, at the very least, I'm open to that, right? But long term, Anthony Bradford has a chance to bring something very special to the table here. And if the Seahawks pull this off, where Bradford settles in at right guard, Christian Haynes makes the move successfully to left guard, that is a really good offensive line for the immediate long term. For the short to medium long term, I guess you could say. The medium term. Haynes, Bradford at your guard spot, Cross at left tackle, fill in the other 2 spots. You got something. So I wanted to go in depth on this a little bit because the Bradford is kind of pulsating as the big obvious weakness on this team right now. And I'm not saying that I think this team needs to allow him to steer the Titanic right into the iceberg here. I think there will come a point where even I have to start wondering why the coaching staff can't just acknowledge that it can't get worse, so why not take a shot at making it better? But there is a long-term play here where Bradford settles in. We're just going to have to give it some time. Hopefully happens sooner rather than later, before Geno Smith gets killed. I understand it. But this is basically Grubb saying, look, if you think that Christian Haynes is going to go in there and be better than what we're getting from Bradford, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And I guess we got to go with that, right? I mean, I think we as Seahawks fans are mostly happy with Ryan Grubb so far. So this is a guy who right now is worth trusting. Maybe if this was coming from somebody who we didn't like a lot of people didn't like Shane Waldron last year, maybe then we would say, I don't know if we buy that. Maybe Shane Waldron is bad. Maybe Shane Waldron just doesn't know what he's doing. But for the moment, I think we got to roll with it. So that's Grubb addressing what we have wanted addressed. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And while Haynes might get to play a little bit this week, Anthony Bradford continues to be ultimately the guy.